What's up, everybody? We have 10 minutes here with Mr. Ryan Muckenhirn. He's been talking with us a lot about cartridges as of late, and we have yet another one by popular demand. Another one that starts with 2.
Yes.
It's the 220 Swift.
Yes.
And I got to admit, I kept saying 22 Swift before because I just kept lopping off that 0, you know? And but I'm incorrect in that. What is the 220 Swift? Is it a 22 caliber bullet or?
It is. So same bullet diameter as like our 22 250, which we've done before, or the very popular 223 Remington, which is not a 223 either. It's a 224.
Oh, so the original 224. Wait, what?
Yes. So bullet diameter 0.224.
But they call it a 223, huh?
Or a 220. Or a 222. Or a 221 in case of the 221 Fireball.
So, okay,
yeah.
maybe there's another one. But the 220 Swift, what's the big deal about it? What's the cartridge? What's its etymology, its family history, ancestry, whatever?
So we're going to go back in time to before the 1900 date. What is that, the 20th century? Yeah. 1895, there's a rifle on the market called the 1895 Lee Navy, which was a really cool straight pull rifle.
Straight pulls are cool.
It is. It was very novel action. I've seen exactly one in my entire life. And it was chambered in this ridiculous cartridge called the 6mm Lee Navy. And it's only ridiculous because at the time there was nothing like it. The cartridge was way ahead of its time.
Okay.
And it actually saw and was adopted as a military service rifle for like 3 to 5 years. And I think only Marines and a small dispatch of the Navy were issued this gun. Long story short.
That's not the only Lee Navy that's been a thing, is it?
That is the only Lee Navy. Now there's the Lee Enfield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I thought I've heard you mention Lee Navy before.
Lee Navy is the parent case of the 220 Swift.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So
an interesting choice.
It was.
Seemed
it is kind of
at
a
the
bizarre
time
one.
as I was reading before
Yeah.
the podcast.
So I was about to say, because when you were saying 6mm Lee Navy, 6mm, as we know from our former 10-minute talk on the 243, is 243.
I knew I was going to ask this question. I know we're talking about the 220 Swift.
Yeah.
But what is the 6mm Lee Navy then?
Oh, you
'Cause
have it written down.
I had
Come
it written
on,
down
Mark.
in,
All right,
in
all
Mark's
right, all right.
speak. Look,
So
it's right there.
It was the military at the time. I think maybe just specifically the Navy was looking for a smaller, higher velocity cartridge to get through light armor, and think like on boats or even people wearing possibly light armor.
What's new? They've been doing it since the 1800s.
1895. And if you get a chance to look at the rifle, they're super cool. Really a novel action design. The bolt tilted up instead of straight back. So when you cammed it went up.
Oh, I feel like it should make a sound effect like,
Like one of those.
yeah.
But that was the case they chose, which is cool. The
So
original
it's neck down.
Yeah.
As with many things, you neck it down, you make it better,
Yeah.
apparently.
They didn't sprinkle 6.5 on it though. They sprinkled 22.
Yeah. Not something that people do all too often these days, aside from when they made the 22 Creedmoor, which is, like what you
Then they just
shoot.
they sprinkled Creed on that one.
Yeah. The 22 Creed's what you shoot if you, drink fancy drinks and hang out with fancy people and fancy cigar bars.
LaCroix.
You shoot ground squirrel's pinky up.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think it was 1935. For the life of me, I cannot remember the name of the guy who did the cartridge.
That's okay. Somebody will shout it out in the comments.
Eventually got adopted by Winchester for the predecessor to the Model 70, which was the Model 54, which is basically a Model 70 with a different rear safety. Short-lived in that and then reintroduced in the Model 70 Varmint, which was a heavy-barreled rig.
Okay.
The cartridge held fast for quite a while. It was very popular with like a cult-level status for hand loaders and varminters.
And it was always called the 220 Swift?
220 Swift, yep.
Okay.
Eventually got replaced by a very, very similar but stronger cartridge called a 225 Winchester. Same bullet diameter. We're just going up in numbers on the end for fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also at that same time, 22 250 hit the scene. Modern case design, wiped them both off the face of the planet.
What's so when you say modern case design? What's so antiquated about its case design?
So if you look at a Swift, it's what's called a semi-rimmed cartridge. So it's not like a 30-30. So it doesn't have like a full rim and like that's how we control the extraction and all that kind of stuff. So it's semi-rimmed. It's not a full width rim. It has a kind of an extractor groove and kind of a rim, semi-rimmed.
Interesting.
And it's got like a long neck as opposed to, say, a shorter neck on a 22 250.
Why is that important?
It's not. but it was kind of wasted space where the designers at Remington, when the 22-250 came out, it was a more robust case. And I shouldn't say the designers at Remington, it was a Wildcat cartridge that was commercially accepted. But
it's kind of, you guys see where you're talking about the rim, but also an extractor groove. And
I find it to be a rather endearing cartridge, and one that is pretty time tested.
Yeah.
So it was one of the first cartridges, if not the first cartridge, commercially available over 4,000 feet per second.
Right.
So in like,
whoa,
yeah, in modern times, I remember when the 204 Ruger came out, which would have been like early 2000s. It was a 32 grain VMAX at 4,200 feet per second, just blisteringly fast. And at the time, I was unaware of the 220 Swift. Did some reading. Well, turns out this cartridge has been on the landscape for the past, 75 years.
Yeah.
In the 220 Swift. And I think where it actually really shines as a cartridge is with heavier bullets, like a 60 grainer or a 62 or a 65 or a 70.
That's pretty beefy
interesting
for a 22 caliber.
Yeah.
bullet. I mean, I guess when you compare it to some of the 223 and 5.56 loads out there, it's similar, but
it's a big bullet.
Yeah.
For that little of a.
Now, why
diameter.
does it shine when you get heavier?
Because we can push it fast. So
Can you push it faster when it's heavier?
well, in that case.
Okay.
So, if we were to load that same 60 grain soft point, like if we go back in time to the original loadings that were 60 grain soft point, and let's say we could also load that in a 223, which didn't come out for many, many, many years later, the 60 grainer in a 220 Swift is probably 3,600 to 3,650, 3,675. In a 223, it would be like 2,700.
Yeah.
So it was just blazingly fast.
What about compared to the 22-250?
They're very much on par.
On par.
The Swift, if you stoke it up and you had like really good brass, you could probably beat it just on case volume alone. When you look at the Swift case, it is a larger case. But the 22-250 case is stronger. So you can develop higher chamber pressures with it safely without blowing your case apart.
Okay.
And so Swift is a neat round, though. I had a Swift. I had a Ruger 77 VT. It was a neat gun. I wanted to see how fast we could push it, and my cranny would not read that high.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was kind of in some early, when I was fresh into reloading, and the chronograph stuff I wasn't super savvy on it. So I'd like to give that a revisit sometime, but there was this 29 grain bullet out there that you could
just
push
got
it.
220 on the clock.
Oh, nice.
29 grain bullet at well over 4,000 feet per second. It was a laser beam. It shot terribly. It was horrible. But
Oh, really?
Now, why is that?
I think I was just teetering the threshold of insanity. So,
Okay, so there's a point where you can just get too fast.
Yeah.
Which is
yeah.
little tiny bullet
Little-
going too fast. Just
Little hot.
Spins out of control or
Yeah.
something.
Now, one thing about the 220 Swift, it seems like it's always had a reputation as a barrel burner. Like, oh, great cartridge, super fast, accurate, great varmint cartridge, but enjoy your 300 round barrel life.
Yeah, it's silly.
Yeah.
Same thing with the 22-250. It's the same cartridge on paper.
Yep.
Like if we were to just, put a black piece of paper in front of the cartridges and show you the velocities and the energies, they're the same.
You're saying it's silly because it's not really something to worry about with barrel burning?
No. I mean, if you were going to stoke it up with, say, that 29 grain bullet or a light for caliber bullet and push it at blistering velocities of like 4,400 feet per second, yeah, you're going to shorten your usable barrel life. But if you're shooting 55 grain, 60 grain, 62, 65 grain bullets, using it as like a coyote rifle or a woodchuck gun or whatever you might be using it for, expect exactly the same barrel life that you would out of your 22-250, which is hardly ever talked about.
Right.
Huh.
Right.
I think it's a really cool cartridge. I've ran into a guy who is his favorite Texas whitetail cartridge.
Oh.
I believe it.
He said the Swift with a 60 grain Sierra and a neck shot, there's no better cartridge for shooting Texas whitetails. I don't know how that qualifies on, say, a Kansas whitetail or Wisconsin whitetail, but he was adamant.
That's
No
interesting.
question about it. I
Yeah.
guarantee it doesn't feel good.
Swift in the neck.
Swift straight to the old neckaroonie.
Yep.
I can't imagine because when you talk about like little bullets going really fast, when they hit something, they just what do they do?
Hydrostatic shock.
So just kablooey?
Yes. Massive energy transfer.
Huh.
The tricky part is penetration. You have to have a bullet that can do that too. That's why, thus the neck shot.
What? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
see.
you're shocking the
CNS.
nervous system there. What about, are there any bullets that are built to drive that are loaded for this cartridge.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, 62 grain TBBC from Trophy Bonded. The Barnes TSX and TTSX is the Sierra Game Kings. Federal 64 grain barrier blind bullet. The Hornady GMX. There's a multitude.
Okay.
You say built to drive.
Like a bonded bullet
Or the AccuBond. I
So
should
like
have forgot.
to actually penetrate.
Mhm.
Okay.
And the
got it.
Nosler partition. There's a 60 grain.
Sorry, I
Nosler
got you thinking about
partition.
cars there again, Jim.
Yeah.
Okay. I know we're over time here.
You got me thinking actually about walking through the woods with pots and pans going, hip, hip.
Yep. The cartridge.
That's where the 30
Topic.
6 Browning BAR comes in.
Yes. Got one of those. It's this crazy, crazy rabbit hole that leads you here, leads you there, then you loop back to this one. I mean, when I was doing a little pre-podcast research on this, I was reading about a cartridge, a Wildcat at the time that was called the 22 Varmeter, which was based off of, is it the 25 300, 250 300?
I'm not familiar with that Wildcat.
Well, okay, what's the parent case for the
Whoa.
22 250?
250 Savage, also known as the 250 3000.
So it was the 250 3000. They were saying this 22 Varmeter later became the 22 250, because when I was reading about this 22 Varmeter, as they were calling it on the computer, maybe this doesn't exist, but they were saying it was based off that case. I'm like, what? Per Ryan, the 2250 was 22 250 was based off this case, and then it said this 22 Varmeter later became the 22 250, which was essentially adopted or by
Recognized
Remington.
by Remington, yeah.
Yeah.
A fascinating wormhole it really is.
Yeah. I love
Amazing.
it though. I get more interested every time.
Same. And there you have it, folks. So for everybody who's been requesting the 220 Swift, some of these ones that we get requests for that I see repeated requests for, and from different people too, they perplex me because the 220 Swift is one I never would have thought of, but a lot of interest in it. So there you have it, folks. Let us know what you think, and if you have any other cartridges out there that you'd like to hear these 10-minute talks about, let us know. Keep letting us know. We're listening. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Ryan, as usual.
Yes.
The walking, talking ammo encyclopedia. All right. See you later.
Bye.
Happy
Bye.
hunting and shooting. Bye. Gosh. Amazing.
It is. It's cool around.
Every time that we discuss a round, I think, oh man, I want to get one of those.
I know. But then I find out that it's like already made.
It's all already been done. We were just talking about that when you came
Oh,
in.
is that what?
Yeah.
Thank you, Ryan, by the way.
So I can't remember.
Like,
if
what
the
okay, this
224
what's the 6mm Lee Navy compared to the 6mm or a 243?
Not far off, but at the time it was loaded with powder that wasn't smokeless powder and it wasn't black powder. I can't remember what they called it. It's kind of like cordite, but the American version of cordite. It can't develop the pressures that like a 243 can, and the case isn't strong enough to do it. But it's not far off. Like it's not, the delineation between the two is not as great as you would think. For one being built in the 1950s and one being built in 1895. So yeah, I mean, propellant technology,
Right.
had it have been available as it was in the 50s in 1895, it would have been a whole different ballgame. We Americans would have been shooting smaller calibers in World War II at that point in time. I'm sure of it, because eventually.
Why not?
Right. So
Eventually we did.
yeah. So what happened is the 6mm Lee Navy, I believe it was an ammunition issue or maybe it was a rifle barrel steel issue. I can't remember. Guns pretty much just fell apart.
Oh.
At that point in time, then the 3040 Krag, which had already been on the scene since 1892 maybe, then became the full adoption. The Army was using the 3040 Krag. It was a similar case design, full rimmed, but shouldered case. Fairly high velocity for that kind of thing. Everybody went to that. The 6mm Navy fell into obscurity. And then many years later.
I got it. 3040 Craigmore. It's the 3040 Craig, but Creedmored.
There is one. It's called
Damn it!
it's
What
called-
the hell?
It's called the 6.5 Krag.
Assholes.
And that super old cartridge. Like 19,
Wait,
yeah,
what?
super old cartridge.
Oh, so it's a 6.5.
Krag.
Oh, so it's not something that somebody just came up
No,
with.
no, super old.
Now, so it's just the Creedmored version of the
Craig.
3040 Craig.
Yeah,
What about the 6mm Craig?
been done.
What about 338?
What about like a 5.5 millimeter? Why doesn't anybody do a 5.5 millimeter?
Is there a 5.5? 220 Russian.
220. Well, then what's the difference between that and the 220 Swift?
A slight bullet diameter difference. 220 Russian is the cartridge that we owe the successes of probably like the 7.62 by 39, the 5.45 by 39, the 6.5 Grendel.
Bull. Okay.
We're gonna. Well, probably.
We got to come up with a wildcat
but
that hasn't been done.
It's all been done.
I guarantee something hasn't been done.
Something hasn't been done.
Without getting along the lines of coming up with an entirely new case. And even that, you're still restricted to the constraints of what you can put inside of an action. And then bolt faces.
Right.
So if we're going to design a cartridge, consider, is this going to be like only we can reload? Or is it going to be something like, oh, we can use brass from this case, or we can use this case? So that's the hard part. There's standardization within the industry as far as bolt faces are concerned that make it, like I say, impossible, but almost impossible to come up with a new case.